I scrubbed the steel floor of the airlock with bleach until my hands burned. The chemical smell stung my nostrils, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Behind the reinforced glass wall, my 4-year-old triplets, Knox, Hayes, and Ledger, played quietly with their sanitized blocks. The same blocks they'd played with yesterday. The same blocks they'd played with every day of their lives. They had never felt the sun on their skin. They had never breathed unfiltered air. They had never run through grass or splashed in a puddle or done any of the things normal children did. My mother-in-law, Odessa, told me they had vein syndrome, a fatal immune deficiency that ran in her late husband's bloodline. She said one breath of regular air could kill them. One touch from an unsanitized hand could trigger a cascade of infections that would shut down their tiny bodies within hours. So I became their prisoner nurse. I lived in this sub-basement, this sterile tomb beneath the colossal Vane estate, administering treatments and maintaining the life support systems that supposedly kept my bobbies alive. Above me, the floorboards creaked as the real world moved on without us. I glanced at the small monitor mounted in the corner, my only window to that world. Usually, it showed nature documentaries that Odessa approved of, but today, the channel had changed somehow. It showed a live press conference. My husband, Stellan, stood at a podium next to a blonde woman dripping in diamonds. She wore a smile that could cut glass and a dress that probably cost more than most people's cars. "I am thrilled to announce my engagement to Miss Winslow," Stellan beamed, his perfect teeth gleaming under the camera lights. "She's brought such joy into my life." My hands froze on the scrub brush. Engagement. A reporter called out from the crowd. "Mr. Vane, any hesitation about starting a family at this stage in your life?" Stellan laughed. The sound echoed through the monitor, and it felt like a knife twisting in my chest. "None whatsoever. I have no baggage, no children, a completely clean slate. Miss Winslow and I are looking forward to building our family together from scratch." The scrub brush slipped from my fingers and clattered against the steel floor. No children. I stared at the screen, my mind refusing to process what I'd just heard. Behind me, Knox called out, "Mommy, why did you drop the brush?" I couldn't answer. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. No children. Clean slate. Suddenly, the basement door hissed open with the pneumatic seal that always made me flinch. Heavy footsteps descended the stairs. Odessa stormed in, her cane clicking against each step like a countdown to punishment. She saw what I was watching. Her eyes went wide with fury. She crossed the room in 3 swift strides and smashed the monitor with her cane. Glass and plastic exploded across the floor. The screen went black, but I could still see Stellan's smile burned into my retinas. "Eyes on the floor, incubator," Odessa shrieked, her face purple with rage. Spittle flew from her lips. "You exist to keep those children alive and this basement clean. Nothing more. You don't get to watch television. You don't get to know about the world up there. You certainly don't get to spy on Stellan's personal life." I kept my eyes down, my body trembling. "Do you understand me?" she demanded. "Yes, ma'am," I whispered. "Or maybe I should turn off the oxygen fans," she continued, her voice dropping to a dangerous purr. "Maybe I should seal the vents and watch them turn blue. Would you like that? Would you like to see what happens when you disobey the rules?" "No, ma'am. I'm sorry, ma'am." She glared at me for another long moment, then turned on her heel and marched back up the stairs. The blast door sealed behind her with a heavy thud that I felt in my bones. I stood there, shaking, staring at the broken monitor. "My name is Calla, and I just realized my children aren't sick. They are secrets." Odessa's footsteps faded above me. I heard the upper door slam, then the click of multiple locks engaging. I was alone again with my boys. But I wasn't the same person I'd been 5 minutes ago. I went to the sleeping quarters where the triplets were settling down for their afternoon rest. The room was white and sterile, with 3 small beds arranged in a row. Medical equipment lined the walls, or at least, what I'd been told was medical equipment. "Mommy, can we play outside today?" Ledger asked, looking up at me with his father's blue eyes. The question broke my heart. He asked it every day. I gave him the same answer every day. Not today, sweetheart. You know you need to stay safe in here where the air is clean. But I feel good, he insisted. I don't feel sick at all. That's because of your medicine, I said automatically. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. I went to the medical cabinet and pulled out the bottle of purple syrup. I'd administered this immune booster every single night for 4 years. Odessa said it was essential. She said without it, the boys would develop life-threatening infections overnight. I held the bottle up to the light. I'd never questioned it before. Why would I? I wasn't a doctor. I was just a maid who'd gotten pregnant by the billionaire son of the house and somehow convinced myself it was love. But today, doubt was a parasite burrowing into my brain. I unscrewed the cap and tasted a single drop. It was sweet, like grape juice. And there was something else, a slightly bitter aftertaste that reminded me of something familiar. Benadryl. My grandmother used to give me Benadryl when I couldn't sleep as a child. This tasted exactly like that. I looked at Ledger again. He was yawning, his little mouth opening wide. "Mommy, I'm sleepy," he murmured, rubbing his eyes. It was 2 in the afternoon. He shouldn't be sleepy. None of them should be this tired all the time. Unless they were being drugged. The bottle trembled in my hands. It wasn't medicine to keep them alive. It was sedatives to keep them quiet. I looked around the sterile room with new eyes. Really looked at it for the first time in years. The walls were white, yes, but they were just painted drywall. No special materials, no decontamination panels. The airlock was just a glorified doorway with some rubber seals. The oxygen filtration system hummed in the corner, but I'd never actually seen anyone service it or change any filters. Had I been lied to about everything? I put the boys down for their nap without giving them the purple syrup. Knox protested a little, but they all eventually drifted off. I watched them sleep, my mind racing. If they weren't sick, then why had I been told they were? Why had I spent 4 years in this basement prison, isolated from the world, convinced I was saving their lives? The answer came to me slowly, horribly. Stellan didn't want anyone to know they existed. His engagement to the steel heiress made perfect sense now. Rich people married rich people. They merged fortunes and family names. A wife and 3 illegitimate children in the basement would ruin that deal. It would make him look like a cheater, a liar, damaged goods. So he hid us, and his mother helped him do it. I sat there in the dark, listening to my children breathe, and felt rage building in my chest like a wildfire. I waited until the boys were deep asleep. Then I moved quietly to the waste disposal chute, the only way anything left this basement. Usually I just bagged the trash and sent it up the chute. I never looked through it. Why would I? It was garbage. But today I dug through the bin where Odessa had thrown some papers last week. She'd called them outdated medical files and told me to dispose of them. I'd been too exhausted to question it. My hands were shaking as I pulled out crumpled papers covered in coffee grounds and other debris. I wiped them clean and spread them out on the floor under the emergency light. Most of them were meaningless, old grocery lists, expired coupons, junk mail. But then I found an invoice that made my blood run cold. It wasn't a medical bill. It was from a company called Stage Solutions LLC. Item: silent fan unit, non-functional display model. Price: $2,400. Notes: customer requested unit for aesthetic purposes only. No actual filtration capacity. Decorative use approved. I read it 3 times to make sure I understood. The oxygen filtration system, the machine that supposedly kept my children alive by purifying the air, was a prop. A fake. A piece of stage equipment meant to look impressive but do absolutely nothing. The air down here was the same as the air up there. My boys didn't need special air. They never had. I looked around the room with new clarity. The rubber seals on the door weren't keeping contamination out. They were keeping us in. The medical equipment beeping softly in the corner wasn't monitoring vitals. It was probably just a sound machine, creating ambient noise to make the lie more convincing. Every single thing I'd been told was a lie. 4 years. 4 years of my life stolen. 4 years of my children's childhoods stolen. I wanted to scream. I wanted to pound on the door until someone came. I wanted to tear this entire basement apart with my bare hands. But I didn't, because rage without a plan was useless. If I was going to save my boys, I needed to be smart. I needed proof, real proof, the kind that even Stellan's lawyers couldn't explain away. I folded the invoice carefully and hid it under my mattress. Then I started planning. I spent the next 2 days observing everything. The patterns, the routines, the security measures. Odessa came down every morning at 8 to inspect the basement. She checked that the boys were properly sedated and that I'd cleaned everything to her standards. She brought down prepackaged meals that she claimed were medically formulated but probably came from a regular grocery store. Then she left, locking the blast door behind her. The door had a biometric scanner that only worked for Stellan or Odessa. I'd tried it once, years ago, and been shocked for my trouble. There was no escaping that way. But I'd noticed something else during my years down here. Every Tuesday at exactly 3 in the morning, the entire house's smart system rebooted for updates. For about 10 seconds, all the electronic locks disengaged. I knew because I'd heard the blast door's magnetic locks click off during those nights when I couldn't sleep. 10 seconds, that was all I had. It was Friday now. I had 4 days to prepare. I started exercising. Push-ups, squats, anything to build strength. I'd been weak for too long, malnourished and exhausted from the constant stress. But adrenaline was a powerful motivator. I also started cutting back on the boys' sedatives. Not stopping them completely, that would be too obvious, but reducing the dose little by little. I needed them to be more alert, stronger, ready to move if we had to run. "Mommy, I don't feel sleepy," Hayes said on Sunday night. "That's good, baby. That means you're getting healthier." He smiled at me, and my heart broke all over again. They trusted me completely. They had no idea what had been done to them. I would fix this. I had to. Tuesday morning came. I was ready. At 2:55 a.m., I stood by the blast door, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst through my ribs. I'd dressed in dark clothes, the black pants and shirt from the emergency supplies kit that Odessa had ironically provided in case of fire. 2:58. I could hear my own breathing, harsh and fast. 2:59. My hands were sweating. 3:00. The lights on the control panel flickered. Click. The red light turned green for just a moment. The magnetic locks disengaged with a soft hum. I pushed. The heavy steel door groaned open, the hinges protesting from lack of use. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the silence. I slipped through the gap and into the dark service hallway of the Vane estate. For the first time in 4 years, I was free. The service hallway was pitch black. I felt my way along the wall, my fingers brushing against rough concrete. Somewhere above me, the massive estate slept. I'd lived here once before the pregnancy. I'd been just a maid then, cleaning toilets and dusting furniture, invisible to the family except when they needed something. Stellan had noticed me one night when I was working late. He'd been charming, interested, different from the cold efficiency of his mother. I'd been so stupid. The hallway ended at a narrow staircase. I climbed it carefully, testing each step before putting my full weight down. The last thing I needed was for a creaky board to give me away. I reached the main floor and paused, listening. Nothing, just the hum of expensive appliances and the tick of an antique clock somewhere in the darkness. I crept toward Stellan's wing of the house. I'd cleaned his bathroom 1,000 times when I was a maid. I knew exactly where to find what I needed. His bedroom door was closed but not locked. Why would it be? He was the king of this castle. He had nothing to fear. I slipped inside. The room smelled like expensive cologne and betrayal. His bed was enormous, draped in silk sheets that probably cost more than I'd earned in a year of cleaning. The bathroom was through a door to the left. I moved quickly now. My window was closing. In the bathroom, I found his hairbrush on the marble counter. It was full of dark hair. Stellan had always been vain about his appearance. I pulled out a plastic bag from my pocket and carefully collected several strands, making sure to get the roots. DNA testing needed the follicles. Then I pulled out the lollipop stick from my other pocket. Knox had chewed on it earlier that day. I'd saved it, wrapped in clean tissue. I had what I needed, Stellan's DNA and one of the boys' DNA. Now, I just needed to get it to someone who could test it. I crept back out of the bedroom and down the hallway toward the servants' entrance. The estate had a night drop box for outgoing mail. I'd used it hundreds of times when I was a maid, sending bills and packages for the family. The box was still there, mounted on the wall near the service door. I addressed the envelope to a DNA testing lab I'd seen advertised on the monitor before Odessa smashed it. I wrote the address from memory, praying I'd gotten it right. For the return address, I used a burner email I'd set up years ago on an old tablet I'd hidden under my mattress. Odessa didn't know about it. She thought I was too broken, too defeated to be resourceful. She'd underestimated me. I dropped the envelope into the slot and heard it tumble down into the collection box. It would be picked up at 6 a.m. by the postal service. Done. I checked my watch. 3:08 a.m. I had 2 minutes to get back to the basement before the system rebooted again and the locks re-engaged. I ran. I barely made it. My feet pounded against the concrete floor as I raced down the service hallway. Behind me, I could hear the house's computer system coming back online, beeping and chirping as it initialized. I threw myself through the gap in the blast door just as the locks engaged with a terrifying thud. The magnetic seals hummed back to life, and the green light turned red again. I lay on the cold floor, gasping for breath, my heart trying to hammer its way out of my chest. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. Now I just had to wait. The next morning, Odessa came down for inspection as usual, but something was different. She moved around the room slowly, sniffing the air like a bloodhound. "You smell like fresh air," she accused, her eyes narrowing at me. My stomach dropped. Could she really smell it, or was she just testing me? "I used a new air freshener," I lied, gripping my mop so hard my knuckles went white. "Lemon zest. I found it in the supply closet you sent down last week." She stared at me for a long moment. I kept my eyes down, my posture submissive, everything she expected from the broken woman she thought I was. Finally, she snorted. "Well, don't use so much next time. It's giving me a headache." "Yes, ma'am." She walked over to the boys, who were playing quietly in their corner. They'd learned long ago to be invisible when grandmother was around. "Stellan is bringing his fiancé for a tour today," Odessa said, running her finger along a shelf and checking for dust. "They'll be looking at the wine cellar door. That's what we tell people this is, you know, the old wine cellar, sealed up because of structural instability." My jaw clenched, of course, the perfect cover story. "Keep those brats absolutely silent," she continued. "If I hear so much as a peep while they're up there, I'll cut the power to everything down here. Understand?" "Yes, ma'am." She left, and I sagged against the wall. A tour. Stellan was going to parade his new fiancé around the house, showing off his wealth and privilege, while his actual children lived in a hole in the ground beneath his feet. The rage that had been simmering in my chest flared hotter. Hours later, I heard voices through the heavy door. They were muffled, but I could make out Stellan's smooth tone and a woman's high-pitched laugh. "This is the old vault," Stellan said. "We keep it sealed. Structural instability from the original foundation settling. It's not safe to open." "It's vibrating," Winslow noted. Her voice was curious, not suspicious. I froze. The ventilation system. The fake one that still made noise even though it did nothing. "Just the boiler," Stellan lied smoothly. "The heating system runs through this section of the basement. Nothing to worry about." I could picture him, standing right there on the other side of the door, inches away from the children he'd denied on national television. Did he ever think about us? Did he ever feel guilty? Or were we just a problem he'd solved by locking us away? Hayes tugged on my sleeve. His nose was twitching. Oh no. "Mommy, I need to sneeze," he whispered. I clamped my hand gently over his mouth and nose. "Hold it, baby, just for a minute. Can you do that?" His eyes watered, but he nodded. I held him close, rocking slightly, praying that Stellan would move on. "Shall we look at the garden next?" Stellan suggested. "I think you'll love the roses." "That sounds wonderful," Winslow agreed. Their footsteps faded. I waited another full minute before releasing Hayes. He sneezed 3 times in rapid succession. "Good job holding it," I whispered, hugging him. "You're so strong." But inside, I was screaming. Stellan was erasing our existence to impress a steel heiress. He was planning his future, his clean slate future, while we rotted in the dark. I needed those DNA results. I needed them now. 3 days of torture passed. Every time I checked the burner tablet, there was nothing. No email, no results, nothing. I started to panic. What if the postal service had lost the package? What if I'd written the address wrong? What if the testing lab thought it was a prank and threw it away? What if this was it? What if we'd never escape? On the 4th day, I was sanitizing the airlock for the 100th time when the tablet pinged. I dropped the scrub brush and lunged for it, my hands shaking so badly I could barely unlock the screen. One new email. Subject, paternity test results, sample VN2847. I opened it. The message was brief and clinical. Sample testing complete. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. Biological relationship confirmed between submitted samples. I stared at the screen, tears blurring my vision. I had proof. Actual scientific proof that Stellan was their father. But there was something else. A second attachment at the bottom of the email. It was labeled, Automated Trust Notification Urgent. My hands trembled as I opened it. Alert, biological male heirs detected via National Registry match. Vane Family Trust mainframe, Clause 44B activated. Asset Protection Protocol initiated. All accounts frozen pending verification. I read it 3 times, my brain struggling to process what I was seeing. What was Clause 44B? Before I could search for more information, the lights in the basement flickered. Then they turned red. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in an eerie crimson glow. The boys started crying. "Mommy, what's happening?" Knox wailed. "It's okay, baby. It's just..." The ventilation system shut off. The constant hum that had been the soundtrack of our lives for 4 years went silent. Then, from upstairs, I heard shouting. Lots of shouting. The estate's smart home system came to life, its artificial voice echoing through the vents. Asset freeze initiated. Identity verification required. All electronic systems entering lockdown mode. More shouting from upstairs. I could hear Odessa screeching and Stellan bellowing, but I couldn't make out the words. The basement door's control panel started beeping. The red light was flashing in a pattern I'd never seen before. System override, access denied. We were locked in, but for the first time in 4 years, it wasn't Odessa doing the locking. I pulled the boys close and tried to understand what was happening. The trust. Stellan's late father's trust. Something about biological male heirs and a registry match. The DNA test. When I'd sent it to the lab, they must have uploaded the results to some kind of database. And that database must have been connected to the Vane Family Trust. I'd accidentally triggered something big. The shouting upstairs got louder. I could hear Stellan now, his voice raw with panic. "What do you mean frozen? Unfreeze them. I'm the executor." A different voice responded, mechanical and calm. "Asset freeze can only be reversed by verified heir presentation or executor override with proper documentation." "I have the documentation. I'm Stellan Vane." Identity confirmed. However, Clause 44B supersedes executor authority when biological heirs are detected. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. The sound bubbled up from my chest, hysterical and wild. Stellan couldn't access his money. None of them could. The boys looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. Stellan's footsteps pounded down the hallway. He slammed his fists against the blast door, and the whole room shook. "Calla," he screamed, "what did you do?" I walked to the intercom panel and pressed the button. I was smiling, actually smiling. "I didn't do anything, Stellan. Did something happen? Did your card get declined?" The sound he made was inhuman, a roar of pure rage. "I'm at the jeweler. I was buying Winslow's wedding ring. My black card was confiscated by the machine. The bank says all the accounts are frozen by the trust. What did you do?" "Sounds like a personal problem," I said coolly. "Maybe you should call your mother." "Don't play games with me," he snarled. "Open this door right now." "I can't. The system locked it. Looks like we're both trapped, Stellan. Except I've been trapped for 4 years, so I'm kind of used to it." I could hear him, hyperventilating on the other side of the door. "This is insane," he muttered. "This can't be happening. The trust can't just freeze everything. I'm the heir. I'm the only heir." "Are you, though?" I asked softly. Silence. Long, terrible silence. "What did you do?" he asked again, but this time his voice was different. Scared. "I proved that you're a liar," I said. "That's all." I released the intercom button and walked away, leaving him to pound uselessly on the door. The boys were watching me with wide eyes. They'd never seen me stand up to anyone before. They'd never heard me speak with anything other than defeat in my voice. "Mommy, are you okay?" Ledger asked. I knelt down and hugged all 3 of them. "I'm better than okay, baby. Everything's going to be okay now." I hoped I was right. I used the tablet to search for information about the Vane family trust. Most of the details were locked behind legal databases I couldn't access, but I found enough. Stellan's father, Leland Vane, had died 5 years ago. By all accounts, he despised his wife, Odessa. Their marriage had been loveless, a business arrangement between 2 powerful families. Leland had suspected, correctly, that Odessa would try to manipulate Stellan into squandering the family fortune on frivolous things. So Leland had set up what the articles called a dead man's switch. If certain conditions were met, specifically, if DNA evidence of legitimate male heirs appeared in any connected registry system, the entire fortune would automatically lock down. Every account, every asset, every stock portfolio would freeze until the heirs were properly presented to the trust's legal representatives and verified. It was designed to protect the bloodline, to make sure the real Vane descendants inherited what was rightfully theirs. Leland never knew about us. He died before I got pregnant, but his paranoid, controlling system had just saved our lives. I looked at my 3 boys, playing quietly with their blocks. They weren't just my sons. They were the keys to a multi-billion-dollar kingdom. And Stellan couldn't touch a single penny without them. An hour after the lockdown began, Odessa made her move. The power to the basement cut out completely. Not the emergency power, the main power. The lights died. The fake ventilation stopped. Even the small heater in the corner went silent. The boys screamed. "It's okay," I called out, fumbling in the dark. "I've got candles, just stay where you are." I'd been hoarding candles from the emergency supplies kit for months. I told myself it was just in case of a power outage, but maybe some part of me had been preparing for this moment all along. I lit them one by one, creating little circles of warm light around the room. "We're camping," I told the boys, forcing cheer into my voice. "Just like in the stories I tell you, remember, people used to sleep under the stars with only campfires for light." "But we can't see stars," Hayes pointed out. "No, but we can pretend. Come on, let's make up constellations on the ceiling." We lay on our backs, pointing at cracks in the paint and inventing patterns. The bear, the dragon, the 3 brothers flying to the moon. Above us, I could hear Odessa's voice through the intercom. "You think you're clever," she screeched. Let's see how long you survive in the dark. Let's see how brave you are when you're freezing and starving." I didn't respond. I knew something she didn't. They needed us alive. Without the boys, the fortune stayed frozen forever. Stellan would lose everything. We had all the power now. The power came back on 2 hours later. I could hear Odessa and Stellan arguing upstairs. "We can't hurt them, you idiot," Stellan was yelling. "Don't you understand? If anything happens to those children, we're finished. The trust will never unlock." "Then what do you suggest?" Odessa snapped back. I'll negotiate. I'll offer her money." "She doesn't want money. She wants out." "Then I'll give her out. I'll give her whatever she wants. Just help me think." There was a long pause. Then Stellan's voice came through the intercom, trembling and false sweet. "Calla, can we talk, please?" I walked to the intercom. "I'm listening." "I understand you're upset. You have every right to be. I made mistakes, but we can fix this, together." "How?" "Open the door from the inside panel. The system will respond to manual override from your side. We can sit down face to face and work this out like adults." "Why would I do that?" "Because I'm prepared to be very generous. $1 million, Calla, in a private account just for you. You and the boys can live anywhere you want. I'll even set up a trust fund for them." $1 million. Once, that would have seemed like an impossible fortune. But now I understood what we were really worth. "I don't want $1 million, Stellan. I want a divorce and full custody." "Never." The sweet tone evaporated instantly. "Those freaks are property of the Vane estate. They were conceived under this roof. They belong here." "Freaks," I repeated softly, "or the only reason you aren't completely bankrupt." He went silent. "That's what I thought," I said, and released the intercom. The stalemate lasted until the next morning, when a new player entered the game. I heard a car pulling up outside. Expensive engine, quiet and powerful. Then a voice I didn't recognize, deep and authoritative. "I'm here to see Mr. Stellan Vane. Trust business." Stellan tried to block him. I could hear it through the vents. "This isn't a good time, Thorn. We're dealing with a family emergency." "The trust alert indicates that biological heirs are on the premises," the voice, Thorn, insisted. "The protocol requires immediate verification. You cannot bar me from performing my duties as trust administrator." "But, Mr. Vane, you can let me verify the heirs, or I can petition the court to have you removed as executor entirely. Your choice." Silence, then grudgingly, "Fine, but the situation is complicated." "I'm sure it is." Footsteps approached the basement door, multiple sets. Then Stellan's voice, tight with barely controlled panic. "Before you go down there, you need to understand. The children have a medical condition. They've been kept in isolation for their own protection." "I see." Thorn's voice was dry, skeptical. The blast door's locks disengaged. The door swung open. 3 people stood in the doorway. Stellan, sweating and disheveled. Odessa, clutching her pearls like a lifeline, and a tall, silver-haired man in an expensive suit carrying a leather briefcase. "Mr. Thorn, I presumed." He looked at the sterile room, at the fake medical equipment, at the 3 pale children huddled behind me. "Good God," he whispered. Thorn stepped into the room slowly, his eyes taking in every detail. The prop ventilation system, the airlock that was really just a door with rubber seals, the decontamination station that was nothing but a sink and some bleach. "They're highly contagious," Odessa blurted out, her voice shrill. "Don't touch them. They have Vane syndrome. 1 breath of regular air could." "There's no such thing as Vane syndrome," Thorn said quietly. He turned to look at her, and his expression was carved from ice. "I was Leland's attorney for 30 years. I know every medical condition that ran in his family. There is no fatal immune deficiency." Odessa's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Thorn turned to me. "Ma'am, are these children ill?" I stepped forward, pulling the mask off my face. I took a deep, dramatic breath of the supposedly contaminated air. "They are perfectly healthy, Mr. Thorn. They've been imprisoned here for 4 years to hide Stellan's baggage from his new fiancée. I pulled the sedative bottle from the shelf and held it out to him. This isn't medicine. It's children's Benadryl mixed with grape juice. Test it yourself. Stellan lunged at me. Shut your mouth. But Thorne's bodyguards, I hadn't even noticed them in the doorway, stepped forward and caught Stellan's arms. They weren't gentle about it. Don't, one of them warned. Thorne took the bottle from my hand and examined it. He opened it, sniffed it, touched a drop to his tongue. Diphenhydramine, he confirmed. A sedative. He looked at Stellan with something approaching disgust. This is a felony, Mr. Vane. Multiple felonies, false imprisonment, child endangerment, fraud. They're my children, Stellan protested. I have the right to. You have no rights, Thorne cut him off. You renounced them when you declared on national television that you had no children. I watched that press conference myself. Thorne set down his briefcase and opened it. He pulled out a phone and made a call. This is Richard Thorne. I need an independent pediatrician at the Vane estate immediately. Yes, it's urgent. 3 children, ages 4. Possible medical neglect situation. He hung up and turned back to me. The doctor will be here within the hour. With your permission, I'd like to have the children examined. Please, I said. I want the truth on record. The boys were terrified. They'd never seen strangers before. Hayes was crying silently, and Knox was hiding behind my legs. It's okay, I whispered to them. These people are here to help us. The doctor is going to make sure you're healthy, that's all. But the air, Ledger started. The air is fine, baby. It was always fine. We were lied to. While we waited for the doctor, someone else arrived at the basement door. Winslow, the fiancée. She must have followed Thorne here, curious about the emergency. She stood in the doorway, staring at the scene with growing horror. You have 3 children, she asked Stellan, her voice barely above a whisper. In a dungeon. It's not a dungeon, Stellan protested. It's a medical isolation facility. They're sick, Winslow. I was protecting them. By telling the world you have no children. She looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. By keeping them locked in a basement. It's complicated. No, she pulled the engagement ring off her finger and threw it at his feet. It's actually very simple. You're a monster. She turned and walked away. I heard her heels clicking up the stairs, then the slam of a car door. An engine started and faded into the distance. Stellan stared after her, devastated. Winslow, he called. Wait, let me explain. But she was gone, and with her went his clean slate, his perfect future, his escape from us. The doctor arrived 45 minutes later. She was a small, efficient woman with kind eyes and gentle hands. She introduced herself as Dr. Chen. Hello, she said to the boys, kneeling down to their level. I'm going to do a checkup, okay? Just like you might have seen in books. I'll listen to your heart and look in your ears. It won't hurt at all. The boys looked at me for permission. I nodded. Dr. Chen examined them one by one, thoroughly and carefully. She checked their lungs, their reflexes, their blood pressure. She drew blood samples for testing. Thorne, Stellan, and Odessa watched in tense silence. Finally, after what felt like hours, Dr. Chen stood up and faced Thorne. Immune systems are completely normal, she announced. No signs of immune deficiency whatsoever. They do have severe vitamin D deficiency from lack of sunlight exposure, and they're slightly underweight. They'll need proper nutrition and outdoor time. But otherwise, these children are healthy. That's impossible, Odessa shrieked. The tests, the diagnosis. What tests? Dr. Chen asked. Show me the medical records. Odessa sputtered. They're confidential. They don't exist, Thorne said flatly. Do they, Mrs. Vane? Odessa's face turned purple. She looked like she might have a stroke. Thorne turned to Stellan, his expression carved from stone. This is criminal. You understand that, don't you? The DA will have a field day with this. Stellan was backing toward the door. I want my lawyer. I'm not saying anything else without my lawyer. That's probably wise, Thorne agreed. You're going to need a very good one. Over the next hour, the basement filled with people. Police officers, social workers, more lawyers, everyone speaking in hushed, serious tones. I sat with the boys in our corner, watching the parade of strangers. They clung to me, overwhelmed and frightened. A detective knelt down next to me. She had a kind face. "Mrs. Vane, I'm Detective Morrison. I need to ask you some questions about what happened here." "I'm not Mrs. Vane," I corrected her. "We were never married, I'm just Calla." "Okay, Calla. Can you tell me how long you've been kept in this basement?" I told her everything. The pregnancy, the diagnosis that never made sense, the years of isolation, the sedatives disguised as medicine, the press conference that opened my eyes. She recorded it all, her expression growing grimmer with each detail. "You're very brave," she said when I finished. "What you did, getting that DNA test that took incredible courage." "I didn't know it would trigger the trust," I admitted. "I just wanted proof for a custody case." "Well, you got more than proof. You got justice." I wasn't sure about that yet, but I was starting to hope. Upstairs, I could hear Stellan yelling at his lawyers. Odessa was being questioned by another detective. The whole house was in chaos. Thorne approached me again. "Ms. Calla, we need to discuss the trust situation." "Okay." "The freeze won't lift until the heirs are formally verified and presented to the board. That means DNA tests, official ones through the court, medical examinations, legal documentation. It's going to take time." "How much time?" "Weeks, possibly months. And during that time, all Vane assets remain frozen. The company, the accounts, everything." I thought about that. Good. He blinked, surprised. "You understand this means you won't have access to funds either." "I don't need billions of dollars, Mr. Thorne. I just need my children to be safe and recognized as who they are. Stellan's sons, Leland's grandsons, legitimate heirs to the Vane name." He studied me for a long moment. Then he smiled, small and approving. "Leland would have liked you." That night, we stayed in the basement. Not because we were locked in, but because the boys were too frightened to leave. The outside world was too big, too strange. But the door was open. We could leave any time we wanted. That changed everything. I lay with the three of them in the largest bed, all of us squeezed together like we always had been. But this time, when Ledger asked, "Can we go outside tomorrow?" I had a different answer. "Yes, baby, we can." "Really?" All three of them sat up, eyes wide. "Really? We're free now. We can do anything we want." "Can we see the sky?" Knox asked. "Yes." "Can we touch grass?" Hayes asked. "Yes." "Can we meet a dog?" Ledger asked. I laughed, tears streaming down my face. "Yes, yes, yes, all of it, everything." They cheered and bounced on the bed, and I let them. No more sedatives, no more quiet voices. They could be as loud as they wanted. Upstairs, I could hear Stellan packing in his room. His empire was crumbling, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Tomorrow, Thorne had told me, the police would formally arrest both Stellan and Odessa. The charges were serious: kidnapping, false imprisonment, child endangerment, fraud. They'd be denied bail because they were flight risks with substantial resources. Well, formerly substantial resources. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. 4 years of survival had worn me down to nothing. But now, finally, I could rest. We were safe. Morning came with sunlight streaming through the basement windows. Windows I'd never noticed before because they'd been covered with blackout curtains that Odessa claimed were medical-grade light filters. I pulled the curtains down. Light flooded the room, golden and beautiful. The boys gasped. "Is that the sun?" Knox whispered, staring at the dust motes dancing in the beam. "Yes, baby." They ran to the window and pressed their faces against the glass, drinking in the sight of the garden outside. Grass, trees, birds. "It's moving," Hayes shouted, pointing at a sparrow hopping along a branch. I was crying again. I seemed to cry constantly now that the numbness had worn off. A knock on the door made me turn. Thorne stood there, briefcase in hand. "The police are upstairs," he said quietly. "They're ready to make the arrests. I thought you might want to know." "Can we watch?" He paused, then nodded. "If you'd like." I gathered the boys. "We're going upstairs. We're going to see the rest of the house. But you need to stay close to me, okay?" They nodded, solemn and scared and excited all at once. We climbed the stairs together. Each step was a revelation. The boys had never been on stairs before. They gripped the railing and took it one step at a time, marveling at the concept. At the top, the main floor of the estate stretched out before us. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, oil paintings worth millions. The boys stared in wonder. "Is this heaven?" Ledger whispered. "No, baby, it's just a house." But I understood what he meant. After 4 years in a concrete box, this seemed impossibly grand. We found Stellan and Odessa in the main foyer. They were surrounded by police officers, and they both looked smaller somehow, defeated. Stellan saw us and flinched. "Calla, please," he started. "We can still work this out. I'll give you whatever you want. Just tell them to drop the charges." I looked at him, really looked at him. This was the man I'd thought I loved. The man who'd smiled at me in the hallways and made me feel seen for the first time in my life. The man who'd promised to take care of me and our Bobbies. The man who'd locked us in a basement for 4 years and denied we existed. "I want you to tell the truth," I said. "That's all I've ever wanted." "The truth," he laughed bitterly. "The truth is that this is all a misunderstanding. The doctors said the boys were sick. I was trying to protect them." "What doctors, Mr. Vane?" Detective Morrison asked. "We've contacted every pediatric specialist in the state. None of them have any record of treating your children." He had no answer. Odessa, handcuffed and furious, spat at me as an officer led her past. "You've destroyed this family, everything Leland built." "No," I said calmly. "I saved the best parts of it." I put my hands on my son's shoulders, shielding them from her venom. The police led Stellan and Odessa out to separate cars. I watched through the window as they were driven away, knowing I'd never have to see them again unless it was in a courtroom. "Are they going to jail?" Knox asked. "Yes, baby." "Good," he said firmly. "They were mean." I hugged him. "Yes, they were, but they can't hurt us anymore." Thorne had arranged for us to stay in a hotel while the legal proceedings moved forward. Nothing too fancy. I didn't want the boys overwhelmed. Just a normal family suite with 2 bedrooms and a view of a park. But first, we had one more thing to do. We walked out the front door of the Vane estate. The same door I'd entered 4 years ago as a maid, hopeful and naive and doomed. I carried Ledger. Knox and Hayes walked beside me, holding my hands. We stepped onto the front lawn. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and violet and pink. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Knox gasped and pointed up. "Mommy, the ceiling is on fire." I laughed through my tears. "No, baby, that's the sky. That's what the sky looks like." "It's so big," Hayes whispered, awed. "It goes on forever," I told him, "and you can see it every day now." They ran onto the grass, their first time touching it. They knelt down, running their hands through the blades, feeling the earth beneath their knees. Then Ledger lay down on his back, staring up at the changing colors. "It's moving," he said. "The sky is changing colors." "That's the sunset," I explained, lying down next to him. "The sun is going to sleep, and soon the stars will come out." "Stars," all 3 of them perked up. "You'll see." We lay there in the grass as the sky darkened, as the first stars appeared like diamonds scattered across velvet. The boys counted them, their voices full of wonder. A news crew had shown up at some point, cameras rolling. But I didn't care. Let them film. Let the world see what had been hidden. Let everyone know that Stellan Vane's no children, clean slate was a lie. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. The legal battles, the DNA verification, the trust negotiations. But tonight, we were just a mother and her 3 sons, seeing the stars for the first time. 6 months passed like a dream. The trial was brief. Stellan's lawyers tried to argue that he'd been misled by medical professionals who didn't exist. Odessa claimed she'd been acting in the children's best interests. None of it mattered. The evidence was overwhelming. The prop medical equipment, the sedatives, the fake diagnosis, my testimony, the doctor's testimony, and most damning of all, Stellan's own words on that press conference video, "No children, clean slate." The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Stellan was sentenced to 20 years. Odessa got 25 because of her leadership role and the evidence that this had been her plan from the beginning. I didn't attend the sentencing. I'd said everything I needed to say. Instead, I was in a boardroom at Vane Enterprises. The DNA verification had come through weeks ago. Knox, Hayes, and Ledger were officially recognized as Leland Vane's biological grandsons and legal heirs to the trust. Thorne had worked with the board to create a new structure. Since the boys were minors, they needed a guardian to manage the trust until they came of age. That guardian was me. "The board has voted," Thorne announced, sliding papers across the table. "You are appointed regent of the trust until the boys turn 25. You'll have full authority over trust decisions, with oversight from myself and the board to ensure the boys' interests are protected." I picked up the pen. My hand was shaking. "This is a lot of responsibility," I said. "You've already proven you can handle it," Thorne replied. "You kept them alive and sane in an impossible situation. You outmaneuvered 2 of the most ruthless people I've ever met. You did what Leland hoped someone would do, protected the real Vane legacy." I signed the papers. Just like that, I went from prisoner to regent. The first thing I did with my new authority was order the basement sealed. Not just locked, completely filled in. I hired contractors to pump concrete into every room, every hallway, every inch of that underground prison. I wanted it erased from existence. "You sure about this, ma'am?" the contractor asked. "It's a lot of square footage to just eliminate." "I'm sure, make it disappear." They did. Within a week, there was nothing left but solid concrete beneath the estate's foundation. No one would ever be locked down there again. The second thing I did was sell the estate itself. I didn't want to live there. Too many memories, too much pain. We bought a normal house in a normal neighborhood with a big backyard and a park nearby. 3 bedrooms, not 3 underground prison cells. Windows that opened. Doors that didn't lock from the outside. The boys loved it. They were thriving. Dr. Chen monitored their progress carefully. The vitamin D deficiency was resolved. Their weight was normalizing. They were catching up developmentally, learning social skills, making friends at the preschool I'd enrolled them in. Every milestone felt like a miracle. Knox's first playdate, Hayes's first birthday party with other children, Ledger's first time on a playground. I documented everything, not for social media or publicity, but for them. So they'd have memories of this new life, this real life, to replace the ones stolen from them. 1 year after that press conference that changed everything, I sat in the park watching my boys play soccer with a golden retriever puppy we'd adopted named Sunshine. They were screaming with joy, chasing the ball, falling in the grass, and getting up laughing. They looked like normal kids now, healthy, happy, free. Thorne had called earlier with news. The prosecutors were denying Stellan's latest appeal. He'd serve the full sentence. So would Odessa. "How do you feel about that?" Thorne had asked. "I don't feel anything," I'd admitted. "They're just people who hurt us once. They can't anymore." And that was true. I'd wasted enough energy on hatred, on anger, on fear. Now I focused on joy. Knox scored a goal and pumped his fist in the air. Hayes tackled him in celebration. Ledger buried his face in Sunshine's fur, giggling as the puppy licked his cheeks. A woman on the next bench smiled at me. "Beautiful boys, you're very blessed." "I know," I said. She had no idea who we were. She didn't recognize me from the news coverage that had dominated headlines for months. She didn't know about the basement or the trial or the billions of dollars. She just saw a mother and her children on a sunny afternoon. That was exactly what I wanted. My phone buzzed. A notification from the trust's financial manager. The quarterly report. Vane Enterprises was thriving under the new management structure. The company was more profitable than ever. But that didn't matter as much as the sound of my boys laughing. I looked up at the sky, that infinite sky that had seemed so miraculous a year ago and now was just part of our daily world. Clouds drifted past. Birds soared overhead. "Mommy," Ledger called, "come play with us." I set down my phone and ran to join them. I wasn't a maid anymore. I wasn't a prisoner. I wasn't even really a regent, though that was my legal title. I was just a mother whose children could finally breathe free air, see the sun, and live the lives they deserved. We'd survived the darkness. Now we lived in the light. And the assets, the billions of dollars that had been frozen and unfrozen, fought over and negotiated. They were doing just fine, sitting in accounts, growing, waiting for 3 boys to become men who would inherit their grandfather's legacy. But for now, those boys were just children, playing in the grass, chasing a puppy, learning what it meant to be free. I tackled Knox gently and he shrieked with delight. Hayes jumped on my back. Ledger grabbed my hands and pulled. We fell into a laughing heap on the grass, Sunshine barking and wagging her tail. This was my empire, not boardrooms and stock portfolios. This moment, this love, this freedom. Everything else was just details. We'd been kept in the dark, drugged and hidden and erased. But we'd emerged into the light. And we were never going back.